Thank you guys for joining the Tech Vertical. I apologize, I missed last time. I know we had a great forum last time. I was actually on the road traveling and I was in cold, freezing Minnesota. And I do mean freezing Minnesota. It was like minus 10 or 12 degrees. I'm in sunny California. For those of you that don't know it, I'm actually in Orange County. But I kind of want to get into the first question of the cost of going against technology. And I brought that up because I feel that and you guys can correct me and give me your opinions and objectives because I want this to be an open forum and open discussion. But what's going on today kind of gives me a little bit of kind of a reminder of what happened between the transition of one century, the late 90s into the 2000s, where people were kind of bucking technology, where they didn't necessarily wanted to go into everybody having a computer on the desk and everybody using Microsoft or the latest Microsoft. And what I'm kind of sensing right now is this whole idea of the hybrid work objective. And so people are scared to move forward to the next state of technology. And I wanted to hear your opinions of that and what you're seeing out there with that, because I know what I'm seeing. So I just want to open it up to the floor and you guys just start a conversation.
I know for us, we've been a work from home environment for our company since 2010. So we've been doing this for a long time. And with our businesses that we work with, we've been talking about, it was kind of like return time to operation. If the office blew up, what are they going to do? And we've been slowly getting clients to move more towards, a potential remote. So when COVID happened, we had everybody up and running within 4 hours because it's been those discussions. I do see, going to the spirit of the question of, yes, if you're not updating enough, then you're not only dealing with cost, you're also dealing with productivity issues, and you're also dealing with security issues. So, we've seen servers that are 10 years old that haven't been patched. So right there, you've got some security problems. But on top of that, you're not able to engage employees a lot faster with whatever's going on that potential server. So we try to have those talks repeatedly and often with businesses on here's the opportunity cost of just doing what you're doing right now, and kind of bringing them to the table on not just telling them, hey, the server's old because the warranty's expired, but here's what's going on as you're letting this expire and how to rectify that.
Don't be bashful. Jump in here, whether it's your own business or clients.
I can add my penny's worth for you. So I'm not a technologist myself. I place tech E&O and cyber insurance, which means that I spend a lot of time working with CISOs and with insurers and what they're looking for. And very specifically, end-of-life software or poor patching is something that they're explicitly looking for that can cause real issues when I'm trying to place the business. If they're seeing a bunch of CVEs, critical CVEs, going back months or years, as sometimes happens, you're going to find it almost impossible to get cyber insurance for it. And similarly with end-of-life stuff, unless there are substantial mitigating controls around the use of that end-of-life, it's another area where you're going to run into problems. So I'm seeing it from a sort of an outside-in perspective, if you will, where the external people I deal with are pressuring my clients to stay up to date.
And we're seeing that a lot too with the cyber liability insurance, where it used to be 3 questions. Are you using a password? Do you have multi-factor? You're good to go. You have a firewall. And now it's, we had to go through one with a business that was about 100 questions now. So they're getting a lot more stringent. And so, we do look at those policies with our businesses and just how badly many of them are set up for as like a rider to their professional liability policy. And I tell them, if something happens, you can probably go and get a Happy Meal with what you can get as, off a claim, off of a rider, and having its own separate policy. And people tend to miss things like reputation damage and things like that. But yeah, getting back to your point, it's not only potentially helping on a security side, but you may be denied cyber liability insurance if you're not getting up to date.
I know the last firm that I worked for up till July last year, we got ransomware, and it probably cost at least $250,000 to rectify it. I don't know what the exact cost was. It was probably, so it could have been 10 times what it would have taken just to fix that. It might have been a lot more. It took 3 companies, a better part of a month and a half, 2 months to rectify what we lost. And we didn't get it all back. The other thing is now some of our customers have gone through the same pain, and they're requiring, like you say, a lot more. Our surveys are a lot deeper. Some of the things that we've been required to fill out just to stay up to speed to be able to do business with them has been a lot more stringent. And the other thing is, the company I'm with now just made a transition April 1st. Within 2 to 3 weeks, they were running smooth, but it took a year to make the transition. It's the best transition I've ever seen in my industry. But one of the other things is we also recognize there's better ways of doing things. So if you're running on software that's 5 years old and you're dispatching, you're running your business and you're dispatching your technicians or whatever you're doing, you're running on old theories and old ways of doing things. And there's a lot better ways to do it. And you can capture some of those best practices with new software. So that's just been my experience.
And I posed that question, the cost of going against technology, and that's what I called it, because, I'll give you a real quick example. If you have a phone that is utilizing mini, what we call USB-C, and you have a phone that's prior to that, you realize you're getting in a car today, you can't even charge your cell phone. I mean, you there's no plug for you. If your phone is over 4 years old right now, good luck charging it in a car that was built from 2018 or 2019 and beyond. You're hoping that you've got a regular AC connector just to charge it. Another reason why I brought up this question, being that I'm in visual technology, but you look at what happened to not just one, but 2 airlines this past summer. Or actually this past Christmas. Now, the one we always focused on was Southwest, but nobody realized that American had the same situation going on. They had outdated software too. So I looked at it as, for companies that say, I don't want to spend the money, what is the cost of going against technology? I mean, I'd like to see what Southwest Airline is going to pay to move 2, maybe 3 iterations up from where they were. Originally, if they had moved up, that might have been, let's say, a $100 million fix. But because they waited so long, they're probably looking at $500 million repair in software objectives. So I think sometimes, especially in CEO's mind and their brain, they always say, I don't need it, I can keep pushing off. I don't need it, I can keep pushing off. But they don't realize that they're missing these in-between stages that winds up costing them 2 and 3 times more if they just went along with the program and just kind of did the steady upgrade. We already know in the corporate world, you're already you're behind 2 steps already. Just a natural ability. What happens? I'll go into a client and they haven't upgraded their stuff in my industry, usually an average of about 10 to 12 years, and then they're often shocked that what I have to do for them. When they bought that system at $600,000 and I'm coming in at $1.2 million or $1.3 million, they're stunned. And you'll show them one part like, well, this part is this much, but had you got the one before that, it was a lot less. But you missed that one, so we're skipping over that and we're going to this new one. In your industry, what have you seen have happened to companies who decided to update after that 2 and 3 times? What have you seen? Has this pushed some of them out of business? Has this pushed some of them to having to get a line of credit that's a lot bigger or longer than they wanted to? What have you seen in that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add, that one thing I'm seeing is that, they're starting, they've made those choices to sort of do these Band-Aid fixes, right? And then now they get hit with potentially a cyber incident, and then there's the point of no return. Now you have no choice, and now you don't even have a choice on what you can do. You got to get the full package, right? You're not identified with your insurance company. You potentially had a couple of guys in a van running around doing your IT, and they weren't insured. And now they don't want to really give information over to an IT company you want to move to. So it's just complete chaos. You're going to be spending a lot more money to get everything set up. That's what I'm seeing a lot of is, that lesson is a real hard lesson being learned, because, right now, a lot of people are reacting to incidents, and that's the wrong way to respond. Usually by that time, you're already behind the 8 ball. And I think a lot of people don't even realize that they signed paperwork for insurance and they made claims that things were in place that weren't. And they do an assessment and they realize you didn't have MFA, you weren't educating your employees, whatever it is, we're not going to approve your policy. That is devastating to some of these companies that I'm having conversations with that are getting hit. Especially those that like print 4,000 or 5,000 checks a month, and all of a sudden there's 60 checks all over the place that are popping up where they weren't supposed to. It's a hard lesson that they're learning right now. The best thing we can do is try to come in and you try to get them to a reset point, and then show them that moving forward things are going to be much more simpler. Reduce the invoices, do on dashboard, all those type of things, because a lot of the damage is done when when I see it, when I've been talking to a lot of these companies.
So there's all of the liability risks that exist, and then there's potential damage to equipment, and having to replace old equipment, stuff like that. I mean, those are one area, some of the cost areas, but what people don't often think about is the potential downtime. So if you're heavily dependent on technology and you can operate for 2 months, 3 months, I mean, that could far exceed what it's going to cost you to replace your servers or anything like that. So, once upon a time, before we really got so interconnected with technology, companies who were manufacturing things would really be concerned about downtime, important critical piece of equipment that breaks down, et cetera. How long does it take to get back up and running? But now it's almost every type of business that has any reliance on technology has that potential downtime. So it can be devastating. My 2 cents.
That's a good point. That's a very, very good point. Oh, please, Jenna, please.
Can I say something? It's James here.
James, I apologize. I see your hand. Go for it. Jen, then you have to.
Yeah, I put my hand up here, lower my hand now. Yeah, so I run a IT and cybersecurity consulting company. I've been doing cybersecurity for about 18 years. And before that, I did a lot of work in what's called fault tolerant computing. So basically environments that are configured like you plan for the components to fail. And so I've kind of taken that same attitude in the cybersecurity realm. And for a number of my clients, what they do is they use overlapping technologies or backup technologies, so that if you end up getting compromised in one fashion, you maybe have a backup plan in another. So maybe your endpoint technology, fails for whatever reason, it's not updated, a 0-day vulnerability came in and attacked it. But then maybe you have like another component that's a logging mechanism, so you can track, hey, well, I see what happened. I can take preemptive steps. So I highly recommend, just from my own philosophical opinion, I highly recommend using overlapping technologies and backup technologies to complement one another. And even so, I was at a cybersecurity conference a few months ago, and the government organization was attacked. It was like a long persistent threat where they compromised their backups. And And all of a sudden, they've been monitoring them for about a year, and then slowly we're encrypting them, and then finally they pulled the pin and said, hey, you need to pay us the ransomware, and they didn't have backups. So you can even apply it to backups, which sounds redundant, but you can have multiple backup systems, because hackers often will target the low-hanging fruit. They'll target one backup system, whereas another system is functional, or maybe it's air-gapped so that, it's not accessible, can't be reviewed. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents. If it's possible, there's various reasons why you can't rely on one technology particularly, but if you have overlapping ones, then that's my philosophical suggestion for the day. Anyway, thanks.
I like that.
Yeah.
Miss Jenna.
I think that there's some of the things that I'm hearing is just making me think of, like, often when I'm working with my company clients and individual, like, leaders of companies, we're looking at not just what are their unique value propositions specific to other, like, in relation to their competitors, how are they distinguishing themselves, and if it's through technology, for instance, like, oh, simple customer experience so that X, Y, and Z with our technology are up to par, right? Like, we're getting clear on what is their internal and external client facing priorities, not just what are they, but what's the order of them. And while they are keeping in mind, are they in defensive mode right now, getting out and putting out fires, or are they in offensive mode? Oh, there you go for a sports metaphor, y'all. Bringing it back. But like, how can we, there we go. It just happened. But how can we get them to a place where they're in offensive mode, preventing fires from coming out and being able to have the right people inform them? Because I find, and I only know one sliver of, through my expertise, but I know enough of what I don't know to say, hey, like, we got to be bringing in consultants in tech, or consultants in someone from your insurance company to be giving you perspective to inform you of the things that you may not understand, that can help you make some decisions for your business ultimately. So I think that's being able to have us as experts be able to inform our clients of what do they not know that would be helpful for them to know, and how are we able to identify those areas.
That's a very good point. I like that.
Mark wants to chime in.
Go for it. Come on, Sean. I thought you were handling it for me, man.
Was that me? Did you say me, Mark?
Yeah, Mark, you're up.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank you, Jenna, for bringing the other aspect, the offensive part of this discussion as well. It was interesting how everybody immediately gravitated to the defensive part, and I get it with cybersecurity, what it is these days, or threat the way it is these days. But yeah, so I think Ivan, you asked a question about the cost of going against technology, and the way that you framed the initial conversation was I saw a couple of things. We immediately started talking about technical debt, which is the cost of using outdated systems and that accumulating over time. And companies, if you're being evaluated or evaluated or looked at or in any sort of due diligence, they're going to look at technical debt as one of the things they're going to look at. So there's technical debt, and then there's risk, cyber risk especially, which is huge, right? And then there's the cost, when Jenna brought up the offensive, the cost of not being innovative, and especially in customer experience. You brought up customer experience, and I'm kind of on that right now with the economy is where it is and where it's going and things like that. There's going to be an ever increasing need to be competitive, innovative, and focus on customer experience and retaining and gaining new clients. And so there are some businesses that don't rely on technology to do that. And, we're going to be respectful of that, but there's not many that don't these days, where technology component is not involved in that. So I think that, we're having a discussion with a business owner recently. Sorry about the wind chimes. And it's on a lot of people's mind, and even in our Highrise group, how do we retain great talent and things like that? And the culture comes up always, and then the next thing that comes up is hybrid or remote and things like that. And so if you're not, as business owners and CEOs and leaders, we obviously need to adopt adapt to culture and adopt technology to facilitate staying on top of your game, let's say. That's my 2 cents.
Great 2 cents, Mark. Appreciate it. Especially as a CIO, you really see things because you have to stay on top of it in that position, and make those decisions for the company. And I like the way Jen talked about, Jen, I like the way you talked about from the offense, because most of the time we do see it from the defensive aspect. Unfortunately, us being in the tech world, we tend to get brought in after the fact. I wish we would get brought in a lot of times. I wish it was a more proactive situation, Mark, but usually the phone call we hear is, for me, is, hey, Ivan, my LED wall isn't working. And yes, I realize it's the old technology and I haven't replaced it in, 9 years. How much is an LED wall of this size now? Well, the LED wall of this size now is $100,000. Holy crap, I bought it for 45. Well, that was 9 years ago.
So just to kind of like further the offense versus the defense, right? So from a defensive perspective, business owners are looking at probably the expense side of the financials, instead, and not thinking about the balance sheet and things like sales and profit margins. So other than the risks involved, like the security type stuff, if you've got a sales force and then they're doing, old school ways of going after market share, et cetera, I mean, the technology offers you tools that make things much more efficient. So that, that's one way to look at the offensive side of it. And I guess sometimes you have to talk to business owners from a financial perspective because they understand that part, expenses with sales and all that kind of thing. So framing the conversations is a big deal, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Carlos.
Yeah, I was just going to add again on the offense piece, because I agree with Abe. We definitely, it's easy to get inbound when there's something wrong, right? That's the easy one. The hard one is trying to get that new business, and the way I try to do it is, try to come up and provide solutions that will decrease the cost of their current stack, so that when you apply my solution, it gets you, maybe it won't get you to, you'll save a little bit, but so in other words, let's say they're spending $100,000. I have a solution that can, because I decrease the amount of ingest into a firewall, let's say, or something, I can get that down to maybe 80. Now you put my solution in, now you're up 10, so you save 10,000, but you have a better solution, you're a better, a better security stack because of that. I think that's how you get offensive. You start talking, and that's one way where you can actually address the balance book, is showing them like, hey, here's your stack. I can improve the efficiency and get that cost down with this solution, so that it pays itself, because you're somewhat spending the same, but you have a better security stack. And I think that's a good way to approach things.
I think real quick, Eric, you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, I was going to play up just, I think, something Mark had said earlier, and it kind of goes, I think, to the notion of offense, and also the first question about, cost of technology. I mean, if nothing else, I think, COVID and the move to hybrid really kind of showed, kind of flashed a light on how important it is to be technology sound and to be ahead of the game a little bit, right? Whether it be ability to support a hybrid workforce, or in the case of customer experience, how do you actually service or reach out to customers when you're not face to face? I mean, I think that really kind of brought everything to light, so customer experience in particular. I know we worked with some customers who, when entire call centers were shut down, how are they able to take calls, sales or service related, without the brick and mortar facility? So that really, those that were more inclined to have automation, to be able to support and work remotely, whether it be internal employees or support customers externally, those are the ones that, really, I won't say thrived, but did a lot better in the last few years than those that were catching up, when the pandemic shut everything down. So, I mean, I can't imagine a better commercial, so to speak, if you will. One of the few positives of COVID has been, I think it showed just how critical technology is. So I think it's been a good thing for technology, and hopefully we'll see more of that going forward. So.
Kirk Lesser, and then I do have a question for Zina. Kirk, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think along those lines is it just can't be, hey, we have backups, or hey, we've got an antivirus. It comes down to like three areas: education. Employees need to be educated on what to do and what not to do. Whether it's phishing testing, whether it's webinars, what have you. And then you need to have the protection element in place for preventing things from happening, and then kind of a remediation type thing in place. And I know that backups were discussed, but also if something were to happen, do you have something like a cyber incident response policy in place? Or are you just going to ride by the seat of your pants? Because that's another thing that's popping up and being required by insurance companies, is having, you know, what happens if this happens? Who do you call? When do you call? When do you invoke an attorney-client privilege and all of that in between? So, you know, it's not just one, but it's a multiple of factors that people need to be updated and understand that this isn't the same thing as back in 2000s, where all you had to worry about was a virus. And, you know, I can avoid, you know, clicking on something. It's like, not anymore. So.
Zina, from a hiring perspective, you know, have you ever seen somebody or have difficulty filling a position because they are not technology advanced? Like, I'd really like to work for that company, but they're just a little far behind. Or on the other end, have you found it easier to staff for a company that is very technologically advanced? Like, oh yeah, of course I want to work for them. From a hiring perspective, what have you seen?
Sure. So post-COVID with technology, the companies that are ahead of technology, they're set up for remote. You attract the best candidates, and you're the companies that get the best hires, right? Because they can write their own ticket. At the same time, when you're an elite technologist, you're attracted to elite technology. And so the best companies with the best technology get the elitist technologist. So, I mean, that's just the way that works. So who gets left behind? The ones that are stuck with brick and mortar. I mean, there's some companies out there that they just are what they are, right? They require brick and mortar. They require you to show up. I mean, retail environments, there's certain things that you just have to go in, right? Being a lawyer, going to court, being a judge, those types of things. But I mean, even we saw our government system go remote during COVID. I mean, there were online hearings and things like that. So I think if you're ahead of technology and you stay with technology, then it's definitely going to give you a wider candidate pool, because who has a smaller candidate pool? The ones that make you come into work 5 days a week, the ones that have a hybrid versus a full remote. So it definitely has an impact. I was thinking about this. I have a client, and I don't work with very many large clients, but I do have a client, One Main Financial, who is a large publicly traded company. And I think it was August or September of last year, they had a massive network data breach. Does anybody remember this? Okay, so they have a massive amount of money. So for me, a small business owner, part of me goes, screw it, I'll take my chances, because 1 million spent all this money on technology, right? They still had a network breach, were held hostage, couldn't get their data back, right? For the ransom situation. And I thought, I mean, I don't even have a 1%, I don't even have a 0.5% of what One Main Financial can throw at their security, right? So maybe I just overinsure. I don't know. Like, you think about because technology changes at the same time so quickly. As a small business owner, how do you keep up with that? How do you keep up with it? I mean, you can advance your technology today and a hacker will find a new way tomorrow.
I think this is the best question. And I mean, clearly I have opinions if you look at my tagline, but I have noticed that frequently we look for tech solutions for bigger problems. Like you mentioned, they got ransomware. You know how easy it is to stop ransomware? So easy. Get rid of all your servers. If you put your data on S3 or like SharePoint, and you put on version control, and you put like a volume-based indicator of compromise alert on there, like 1 in a million chances that you're going to get hit, and that costs like $4 a month. The problem is, I think, a broader cultural one where we are seeing as businesses, there is substantial value in outsourcing to somebody else that's better than us. Whether you're talking logistics, it's usually better to do a 3PL or maybe Amazon for your shipping and maybe purchasing. And it's better to not do IT yourself. And it's better to not do finance yourself. But 40 years ago, you needed your bookkeeper, and he was going to do all the things, AP, AR, FP&A, but he was going to do a crappy job of all of them. Now you can buy a fraction of 12 people, each who are very good at each of those things, and you're going to get substantially better value. And in the same way, not doing security anymore, just saying websites on Wix, probably not going to fall over very frequently, is a better strategy. And you don't have to worry about CVEs anymore, like never again.
Let me chime in here on that too, even though that's not my field of expertise, but I have some knowledge in it pretty good. One of the things you're right about, Dillon, is if you go to SharePoint, but then if you also invoke some of the security measures like AppRiver, that would gather those emails that come in that you've never seen before, because some of this is just generational gaps. Some of it's just user error. I mean, you're not anymore. I mean, at this point, I should not have to teach you not to click on every single email that slips through security. But you'd be amazed at how many people still click on that. And if you employed something like an AppRiver where it gathered all those new emails that haven't been whitelisted, you can actually look at it and say, I'm not taking that, I'm not taking that, I'm not opening that. So I think it's a combination, Dillon, between not just being off the servers, but I think HR doesn't do a good job of employing the IT department to train people on, here are things that you need to look for. You don't really take a class. I mean, most of us, when we do HR stuff, we go through and do an online class and take the test and get the certificate. And that's pretty much it. I think what has to happen is our IT department needs to say, hey, we're going to carve out an hour today and we're going to take you through and actually look at some of the things that might be coming through that slip through into your inbox that please don't click yes on and contaminate everybody else and lock us out for the next 20 years. So I think it's employing that and just some common sense things that we don't do.
At the same time, so Amazon, I feel like, has been deeply inspirational to a lot of tech businesses, not in terms of tech, but in terms of process. When the Virginia data center went down, they didn't fire anybody. Like the guy who pushed the change that took it down was lead on the let's not have this happen again conversation. And so if you want a business that's resilient to like ransomware or like simple invoice fraud or employee running off with something, or I don't know, whatever risk you want, the solution is not in tech. Like tech's going to play a role for sure, but it's process resilience that's going to really carry the ball the furthest, to sneak in another sports metaphor.
Ivan, we got two more people that want to chime in real quick.
Yeah.
Say, as a former trainer myself, yes, we do train on that. People know they're going to get that email. They know there's an email that is a fake email every single month, and they still click on it. Don't blame your trainer. Don't blame your trainer. Kirk Lesser, save me from myself. What is your opinion? Then Mark Jordan, we're going to come to you next. So Kirk, then Mark.
Yeah,
and then Vince after that.
And going back to the whole HR thing, and this is what we also have conversations with clients, is make sure that the handbooks are updated, because a lot of people have BYOD policy, or they have a bring your own device type environment, which is fine in a way, as long as one, you're managing those personal devices, and two, that if that person is holding your intellectual property, what the hell do you do with them if you let them go remotely and you didn't give them the opportunity or the knowledge that you were going to wipe their computer or wipe data off of their computer? There's a bunch of this. And also, we do training we do phishing training with clients, and we have clients that those people that are repeatedly failing it and failing the training will get written up by HR. I did have a client that fired or laid off people because they were a security threat because they would fail every single time and they would input their data every single time for a test. And so, I know policies vary and laws vary, but it's very important to get the employees because 90% of breaches are because of something that an employee did.
Mark, we're coming to you, and I would like to hear from the group. Ivan, maybe you can chime in as well. What do you do when the person keeps failing is in the C-suite? What do you do when the person who keeps failing or causing the breaches in the C-suite? And I'm not picking on anybody here that is in the C-suite. I'm just telling you, you see the details all the time. So that is interesting because I think HR will write them up, but it depends. It is very ish. I have never seen a CIO written up. Mark will never get written up because he's perfect. Mark Jordan, give your opinion on what's going on.
Well, I wanted to address Zina's original thought, like, hey, this is so overwhelming. Do I just overinsure and say, I can't do much more, And I would say that I think there was a lot of businesses that did that probably about 2-3 years ago and said, hey, I'm just going to get a really good cyber liability insurance policy. And Abe and Rich, I'm sure you probably heard, keened in on when Zina mentioned that. But I think that era is now over, obviously. Or if you didn't know that, I mean, the cyber liability insurance market has drastically changed in the last 18 months. Some underwriters have completely pulled out of the market. The insurance has gone up considerably, and there are now very stringent cyber liability insurance questionnaires that one of my esteemed colleagues had mentioned. It was 100 questions you had to answer to even get cyber liability insurance. So I think, in brief, we talked about a lot of little different things and policies and training and things like that. Basically, every business, no matter who you are, needs some sort of a cyber defense program that meets your needs. You have to have some sort of a layered defense system in place. Doesn't have to be as sophisticated as a large bank, but you definitely need something to deter, because otherwise you're not going to be getting cyber liability insurance. You won't get the renewal policy. Correct me if I'm wrong, Abe or Rich. But you won't be able to renew, in which case then you're completely exposed. So everybody's got to develop, every business owner here needs to develop a budget for cyber defense, have a program, and make sure that your MSP or your IT consultant is managing against that program on a continual basis and giving the information back to the owners and the CEOs. It's important that you know this, a quantifiable risk, make sure you know it, and that you have confidence that your business is protected. I just want to stop there on the cyber. Sorry.
Go for it, George.
I was just going to say, I'm a middle market investment banker, so I'm not even an IT professional, but I have one prospective client who came to me recently and was thinking about selling a business. He wanted to know what he needed to do. And about 2 weeks into our process of gathering data from him, he got hacked and ransomed. And they asked for $100,000 and he told them to go pound sand. And what he eventually did is just told his people to tear down his own servers. And they had to meticulously recreate their data from their last backup in January by hand. It shut them down for about 2 weeks. And he said that he did have errors and omissions insurance and was hoping to cash on that. But, it was just a brutal situation. And I think the punchline, though, is that they got to him through his own IT security company to his own servers. So guessing they won't be renewed.
Well, George, real quick, and I wanted to also let Vince chime in because he wrote something I thought we should talk about. But one of the things that IT, that whole part of technology, is that it's an industry that even they can't keep up with their own clients. The clients outnumber the industry. It really does. And so what happens is you get a lot of people that have that knowledge and they've got their licenses, meaning their license, meaning they've been certified for different levels and different things. And so they're quick to just jump out there and start an IT company. And it's easy to go and get a couple of 3 or 4 guys and get clients that, you know, when I say small business, these are business that probably do less than 5 million a year. It's very easy to get those type of clients, and you can do it very quickly. I mean, if you're a good person, you have a good head on your shoulder, you know how to sell, within 30 days, you probably could have 10 to 15 clients of $5 million or less easily. And that's what happens with a lot of companies. They jump in and they're again, looking at the price points instead of looking at quality. You know, people that have a track record, have clients, have been in business for a sustained amount of time. They jump on these little companies, and these companies don't have the infrastructure to protect them. So they're just as vulnerable. And if anything, I would say to anybody here who's not an IT company or in IT, if you're just going to look at price points, you're going to get what you pay for. Because this industry, the IT industry, is an industry that tomorrow, I could start an IT company tomorrow, find 3 guys, and probably have 20 clients on my books within 30 days.
If you can have 3 IT people on your books by tomorrow, like, I need you to come work or teach me how to do whatever you're doing. But I get what you're saying on the small IT business for sure, because it's just, there's such an abundance of opportunities out there. You know, for us, our safeguard is everything is hosted. Everything, right? We have an office in Redwood City, California that does nothing but host servers that are unplugged. Right? They're just collecting dust. They're just sitting there. They've been there for a while. But at the same time, at least when it was hosted in your own backyard, you knew exactly what was happening, right? Your IT person that was in charge. We don't even have an IT person anymore. We have an IT consultant that we use. Right. And so everything being outsourced, or everything with, hosted, you wonder, okay, because I'm still getting all day long these sophisticated, you mentioned the invoice emails. I mean, I got one from my business partner and it wasn't even him. And I thought for sure, and the only reason that it caught my attention is because it was such an astronomical amount that I was like, he would have told me about this. Surely this is fraudulent, right? Like, this is ridiculous. And so, but I've also gotten things from things that are our vendors, like from LinkedIn, from Indeed, vendors that we pay all day long, every day. And it's, very easy to think that that is a legitimate, invoice or message or whatever. So not being an IT company, not being an IT person, we're putting all of our trust into these companies. So all we can do is insure ourselves, because all of our trust is in our vendors or our supplier. So how do you vet those? And how do you, as a non-IT person, how do you take the steps to know that you're with the right SaaS, you're with the right host, you're with, how do you check on them to be sure that they're compliant and they are up to speed? When a company like OneMain or our US government are getting hacked and ransomware, how does little old me, even if I'm willing to throw money at it, how do I know? What can I do? What is my due diligence?
It's like if you find a doctor, you go to ask other people, who can you trust?
It's got to be a lot of training for all employees. It's not just the equipment that you have, but it's the people that are operating the equipment. So
yeah,
somebody very low end of the totem pole can be your biggest weakness if they're just clicking on every darn thing that comes across in their emails.
For sure.
Company I work for requires ongoing training. I mean, it's all internet based. It takes about 5 minutes every session. You have to complete all the sections. They use a platform called Know Before, something like that. So it's a lot of work. I mean, as a business, you can no longer just be an expert at the thing that you do. You have to be in the protection business just as much as anything else. And I don't own a business myself, so I don't know what those costs can look like. But the downside is, if you're not doing anything, I mean, you just shut you down altogether. So, I mean, from an insurance guy's perspective, we always think about what is the thing that's going to put you out of business. And that's where we start. So, a $5,000 fire is not the thing that I'm worried about. Most businesses can probably absorb that type of loss, but it's the thing that's going to shut you down, right? So if you're making a good living running a business, and whether you think it's heavily reliant on technology or not, the question you got to keep asking yourself is, what if something happens and it just shuts my operation down for 3 months, 2 months, 6 months? What does that cost me? Does that put me out of business? So it's not really about insurance. It's more about risk management. And one of my favorite quotes, Benjamin Franklin, I'm pretty sure it was him. What is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound in cure. So I think when we're talking about IT, it sounds like most of us are, and most of you guys, all the tech guys here, are in the business of preventing disasters and stuff like that. Is that right? Or is there anybody here in technology that's not about protection of a business?
Yeah, I think Ivan, thanks for bringing it up. And I think I brought up blockchain about 20 minutes ago because I feel like this is one of the big conversations related, right? So we've had some success implementing for IoT and data storage. And I'm just curious as it relates to this conversation, what you think about blockchain and any thoughts related to cyber.
Which part? I know a lot of people think of blockchain as like a virtual currency, but there's also a web of trust to track a transaction through, between multiple parties that don't necessarily trust each other.
I was referring mostly to the fact that it's immutable data, right? So if you look at data storage, the Shoah Foundation and things like that, where you can prove this is a thing, right? So too many people get caught up in crypto which is the result of the technology of blockchain. And I love talking about how it relates, right? How blockchain relates to cybersecurity. In my opinion, it's future proofing, right? Because if blockchain is, again, immutable data, it's very different, right? So I'm just curious what everyone thinks about that mainly as it relates to cybersecurity. So the actual technology itself, forget about the ledger and everything else. Just talk about the fact that it's the ability to hack it, I guess, is a great question to put out there.
Partially, the immutability is also a liability, and because people are tricked, and if we only relied on technical methods to do transactions, that means you can't back out any transactions. That's one of the problems with a lot of the crypto markets. And so the Federal Reserve has a hard time. Like if you have a judgment against someone, or you say like there was fraud here, you can't get it back. So in order for that to be a meaningful vehicle for commerce, you have to kind of have it be perfect before you can start using it, because you have no secondary mechanisms to like back it up. Now, some people are very smart and maybe these problems will be solved, but this is a challenge today.
Very good point. I thought about that as well. And I just bring it up as it relates to cyber. I just love the conversation today and just kind of how it relates, right? How people think it could help. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people agree there's pretty fascinating technology. It's a question of what you do with it and how, right? It's so new. So I appreciate that feedback.
I'm aware of a company that is actually using blockchain as an immutable backup mechanism. So selling against VM and Rubrik, for example, by using blockchain. It's a startup in Florida, if memory serves me right, which I thought was interesting.
I think we have time for one more comment or question. Alex, I know you had your hand up and you put it down. Did you want to chime in or pose a question to anything?
I just had a comment, and I apologize. I was actually late off a client call, but I think it's important to move from a defensive kind of risk mitigation posture at some point to security as a biz dev tool. And I'll give you a quick example. So I've got a couple of creative agencies that work with like Twitter and Airbnb, and they're on the approved vendors list. And when it's time to do a project, these large guys will send out an inquiry and say, here's the project, here are the requirements. And often it's security governance documents, acceptable use policies, pen test, et cetera, the stuff that everybody should kind of have in place. And my clients came to me last minute to get the stuff in place. And now they just submit the stuff because we update it twice a year usually. And they're able to basically bid first on this thing and get rubber stamped, right? As opposed to spinning their wheels. Oh, I really want this project, but now I got to go and put the security paperwork in place. So that was a pivotal change. It's like, hey, we did all the security stuff so you could be able to go and bid on this stuff like pro forma, right? You already got all the boxes checked. Let's go get this business. And I think that was transformative, right?
Well, this has been great conversation. I kind of wanted to open it up today this way because, I think that I don't know if how many of you are in California or even read the LA Times, but about 3 weeks ago, the Times did a whole page and a half on the whole hybrid situation. And what they had discovered was blue states were advancing because they were implementing the hybrid situation and continue to implement hybrid, whereas the red states were not. And therefore, a lot of companies were moving away from those red states only because they were looking for the ability to not have to occupy office space and have people work from home. But I brought this up because I know in my industry, which is growing even more with visual objectives and digital display and digital signage and the different things that I'm creating, I can't believe the amount of we call it corporate broadcasting that we're creating for companies. Instead of being all hands room, it's basically corporate broadcasting rooms that allow them to broadcast on everything, tablets, computers, everything. So, but I just felt like companies were just fighting almost like they did in the late 90s, just fighting this idea that they have to deal with technology and upgrade their technology and stay on top of their technology. And, they've created these are the same companies that have created a generation of kids that were born and raised on technology. And so this new generation, which are my children's generation, that's all they know. So you can't create a habit and then at the same time, you want to break the habit, but you're making money off the habit. So it's kind of an oxymoron to what they're doing today. I mean, even I have clients in the auto industry. They don't sell cars. They sell client experiences. They sell technology, and they will tell you. And when you go in and look at a car today, they're not going to tell you how big the engine is, how fast the thing moves. They're going to tell you all the things you can connect your phone, connect your laptop. We have our own Wi-Fi system in it. That's what they're talking about today. So I just thought that opening up the forum of if you're seeing things out there of who's fighting technology and not wanting to move to the next iteration and find themselves in a hole financially from it. Back to you, Mr. Sean.
Ivan, thank you for a great conversation. Trying to be respect for everybody's time. A whopping 1 minute over. Thanks for hanging out for an extra minute. It was definitely worth the time. Appreciate you all. We will see you on the next vertical.
Sure.
Everybody have a wonderful day. Ivan, thank you again so much.